Hi there. My topic today is going to be about a subject that sort of fits in with my longer mind control video that's coming up, but I didn't want to have to cover this in the longer video. So I'm just going to make a short video about it on its own because it's a really important topic. And it's the science about this is kind of relatively recent. The first article that I'm going to talk about is from February of 2009, and it's called "Child Abuse Alters Stress Fighting Gene," study says. That's the National Geographic title. There's a BBC News article that I'll also include below that says "Child Abuse Impacts Stress Gene." It's the same time period. It's February of 2009. So that's kind of when this study came out from McGill University in Montreal. So the National Geographic one, I'll just read the beginning so you get an idea of what the study was about and everything. Child abuse can permanently alter the way a key stress-fighting gene works, leaving victims more vulnerable to stressful events throughout their lives, new research reveals. Scientists compared the brains of suicide victims who had been abused as children with the brains of non-abused suicide victims and people who died of other causes. It seems that we see in the genome the mark of childhood abuse, said the study co-author. So the next part says, leaving a mark. The genes we inherit are marked with chemicals that determine how they will perform their functions. In this case, the abuse victim's underlying DNA was not changed. Instead, a particular gene's expression was dampened, causing the brain to produce fewer calming hormones. The idea that the environment can have this sort of impact is key in the developing field of epigenetics, the study of how gene expression changes without altering DNA. Now, I think the eugenics people have known about this for a long time. It's also come out now that epigenetic changes can be passed on from parent to offspring. A lot of these nutritional deficiencies are involved, and they are passed from parent to offspring. And I have come to the conclusion, tentatively, that in most cases, gene expression can be dampened, so-called, or damaged more easily when there is deficiency going on nutritionally. So an abused child who is not at all nutritionally deficient probably has a much better chance of either not having the dampened gene expression or recovering from it, meaning that they can switch the genes back on again. And that's a part of the video that is coming up. I want to just sort of touch upon the BBC article because it goes into that a little bit more than the National Geographic one. The BBC article is talking about how child abuse impacts the stress gene, and it talks about how analysis of the brain tissue and how it affects the production of a receptor known to be involved in the stress responses. So previous research has shown that abuse in childhood is associated with an increased reaction to stressful circumstances. So we know that child abuse tends to make people a bit more neurotic in adulthood. But exactly how environmental factors interact with genes and contribute to depression or other mental disorders in adulthood is not well understood. And they're saying that they examine the gene for the glucocorticoid receptor, which helps control response to stress. It has everything to do with cortisol and these receptors that have a lot to do with the way the brain connects with the adrenals. And that's my basic understanding of all of that. So it's totally damaging the ability to have an interconnected endocrine system. And I find that it's not just abuse victims that have this. I mean, children who are chronically ill tend to end up having epigenetic problems into adulthood. A lot of these epigenetic changes have everything to do with low vitamin D, low vitamin C, lack of B vitamins, those kind of things. And so many of these children are being prescribed drugs, and drugs are always the answer they're coming up with. But at the end of this BBC article, it says the exciting thing about epigenetic alterations is that they are potentially reversible. and thus perhaps a future target for therapeutic intervention. Now, isn't it funny to me how that's the last sentence? Is they're saying this is potentially reversible, and thus perhaps a future target for a therapeutic intervention, which means drugs. And they even he even says earlier in the article, beyond that, we could ask whether a drug could reverse these effects, and that's a possibility, of course. But then you go back to the beginning of the article again, the first sentence: abuse in early childhood permanently alters how the brain reacts to stress. Permanently alters. So they're telling you in the first sentence the opposite generally of what they're telling you in the last sentence. So it's not necessarily permanent after all. It's potentially reversible. Bullshit, it's totally reversible. And they know that. Now, in my opinion, that's like a huge part of what's been going on, is the fact that so much of this stuff is reversible, but it just takes some nutrition, and it takes, perhaps some therapies, anything from breathing work, energy work, meridian work through acupuncture and body work, maybe frequencies, EFT, energy psychology, hypnosis. There's all kinds of things that we can look into. There's also the fact that on the edge of society, there are things like rituals and ayahuasca and what the ancients used to do and the shamans used to do to deal with people who had been traumatized. And it's the same goes, I think, for the perp. And we know that, I think it's obvious to me that ritual has everything to do with genetic expression. And that's, maybe something that I can get into more later on as well. So the next article that I found about this was one that came up recently, and this is kind of what reminded me of the whole subject. And it's from late December 2012, and I'll post this down there too. It's on Live Science. And it says, bullying may alter gene expression, study finds. So now it's not just childhood abuse. We're also talking about bullying in the schoolyard. Bullying may leave long-lasting scars on kids' DNA in addition to their psyche, new research suggests. A small study found that bullied kids are more likely to have changes in the expression of a gene involved in mood regulation compared with their identical twin siblings who were not bullied. So the bullied people end up having gene expression involved in mood regulation messed with. And they're saying that since they were identical twins, living in the same conditions, changes in the chemical structure surrounding the gene cannot be explained by genetics or family environment. Our results suggest that victimization experiences are the source of these changes. And I think that's a huge key to what a lot of these ritual abuse and mind control goons have known for a long time. And if you victimize someone in childhood, for some reason it's really tends to be more permanent than if it's in adulthood. And it is harder to reverse, I think. And I don't think people should be flippant about, this is reversible. I don't think drugs are the answer, but I do think that there are many different therapies that have already advanced quite a bit that have been effective for people, and they need to be applied to this kind of science and find out, hey, whether or not these kind of therapies that have had such use for so many people are actually having positive epigenetic results for people that have had this kind of damage. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm coming from about all this and how it relates to mind control especially. I think that this is a lot of what's behind the MK Ultra science. Mind control affects the genes and the genetic expression. It's a very important key that is not really talked about very much.